Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the Third Eye Energy Center presentation on the development, traumas, and issues around the third eye. So, see, we all know where the third eye sits in the middle of the brow. It's connected to the pineal gland, and from my experience of being able to see energy, when I see people with a blocked third eye, it looks like confusion. And it looks like, and I actually used to have this quite a lot, and I've got two lines here that have actually faded as my third eye's opened, which is quite interesting because they do say that wrinkles are to do with traumas and fears, and issues that we have throughout our lives. So it's very interesting, maybe an observation that you might want to make just as you're kind of going about your life, to just have a look at how people, what they're doing with their brow, right? Because we are taking in information, we're taking in energy through that center constantly. Whether it's blocked or not, we've got information that's kind of trying to come in. And so, yeah, it's just quite interesting as I kind of navigate through my life now to look at people and see, and this is, as in when we've got their shoulders slumped forward, they've maybe got their heart protected and their heart's got trauma and damage. And it's the same in the third eye, it's like just that trying to figure things out and not really having the bigger picture, not being able to see what's really going on. I've kind of lost my voice a little bit in the last few days, so bear with me. I'll probably have to have a few drinks throughout this presentation. So the first thing that we need to talk about when we talk about the third eye is our image. And so the image that we have of ourselves is held in the third eye. And so if we are very introspective and we're kind of, very self-analytical, we can take the image that we kind of have of ourselves through those critical voices and project that onto the image that we see of ourselves in the external. And we try to fit ourselves into the image that popular culture programs into our consciousness. And yeah, so this is, obviously women with body dysmorphia, men who project, what they want from a woman onto women and won't necessarily see that, women come in all shapes and sizes and everybody is beautiful. But we have this popular culture of, the Barbie doll look or whatever it is. A lot of us in the mainstream are trying to fit ourselves into that image, and that's not our true image. That's not our authentic selves, right? We all have a personal identity. We all have an archetype that we kind of tend towards. And if we're trying to fit ourselves into these images that society has kind of said is correct, is right, we're going to be pulling ourselves away from our natural selves, just in the mere effort of doing this. Okay, so even thinking about that is actually pulling ourselves away from our authentic self. And as we're doing that, we are lowering our vibration. So, and we're creating, separation between what we're trying to project and what's really going on. So the more that we don't know ourselves, the more people don't know us, and the less that we are creating our own reality from that place. So yeah, if we have an image of ourselves as fat, for example, we can become convinced that no one will be interested in us. We can isolate ourselves, we can comfort eat, and our image of ourselves become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So this is the person who kind of says that they're too fat to go out, no one wants to see them, so they sit at home and they eat ice cream, and then they become that person, right? So the idealized image of beauty in our minds, we believe that that image is to be real rather than the people around us. So people create a reality around that image. So the nice house, the nice car, the attractive partner, and we're living out the image rather than our true selves. And this is where people start to become really lost. This is where people start to become really unhappy, because what they're doing is they're thinking that they're living into this image that, you know, that is going to make them happy once they reach this point, right? Once I get the car, once I lose the weight, once I do this, once I'm going to become what society has said is a happy, attractive, you know, wealthy person. Now, what is wealth? We all know that it's, you know, wealth is created from the inside. And yeah, so we're living out this image and we're not our true selves. And we're living by outer direction. So it's not what we want for ourselves, it's what society says that we want for ourselves. And as much as we're trying to live out this image, we're disconnecting with our inner truth. So what's our inner truth saying that we want, our feeling? So we're disconnecting more and more from our real truth and from our inner feeling. And when this begins to come apart and we're forced to look beneath this outer image, we have to learn a whole new way of seeing in order to recognize the person that dwells within. So this happens a lot, you know, maybe in midlife crisis, you know, quite often with motherhood. And that's what I discovered when I kind of reached motherhood. It was like a rebirth, and I was stripped back to, you know, who am I? What is my image? What was my image before? You know, my image was maybe a party girl, and what was that? That wasn't my truth. You know, that actually wasn't who I really was. So actually having children going through that whole dark period, which I think a lot of mothers go through, and it can be turned, you know, postnatal depression, and it's really just a stripping back of who we are, who we were to become who we are supposed to be, who we're meant to be. So when our consciousness gets wrapped around an image, so our third eye, our energy, our consciousness in that center gets wrapped around an image, and although the other energy centers are involved, the discrepancy between the image and reality needs to be confronted to see it at a deeper level. So it needs to be addressed in the third eye. So what we really need to do is begin to be able to see clearly our, you know, our patterns. All of our different energy centers need to be looked at to be able to understand who we really are. So what the reality of who we are is. So when our illusionary images are reinforced by the culture at large, it's become very difficult to do. We're bombarded daily by images that tell us how to look, how to feel, how to behave, what to buy, where to go, and even what to see. I saw a meme the other day on Facebook that just made me laugh. It said, be yourself. No, not like that, says society. And it's like, you know, we see all these things that are like, just be yourself, you know, be authentic, be true, be real. But we're not taught how to be real. We're not encouraged to be the true essence of ourselves. All we see around on adverts, magazines, you know, and this is coming in on an unconscious level. We're not aware of it. We go to the shops and we're surrounded by it, you know, packaging, all sorts of things. Even with babies, you know, there's projected images onto babies. I was thinking that today of like the beautiful babies on the nappies packets, and you know, people start projecting this onto their own children, that they have to look a certain way, and then their children can't create their own image. They're told how to look, they're told what to dress, they're told, you know, how to be from the get-go. And so, yeah, our minds are being unconsciously programmed, and our thinking process is said to be 90% visual, which is really, you know, really, really high. And the images that are around us, we're taking all that in, and we're taking it in through the lens of what we believe to be true, what we're kind of projecting, right? So what we choose to take in on that 90% is is to do with, we could walk around and we could look at the trees and we could be like, wow, the tree's so beautiful. Or we could be looking at a person coming up the road next to us and we could be comparing ourselves to them, thinking about our own image. And yeah, this affects all that we see and do, and they distort the nature of what we see, creating illusions that we then take for reality. So the illusions are basically an illusion, which we'll go into a little bit later, but an illusion is what we have seen as a pattern throughout our life that we believe is real, which we believe is true. For example, my dad always was very, he used to say things like women should have long hair. He was always very kind of attracted to very skinny women. And therefore, throughout my whole life, I've actually believed that that's the case, right? And that's an illusion because I'm stuck in, not only am I stuck in the past and past programming, but I'm also stuck in somebody else's belief system. And it's not real. It's not based in reality. The light of consciousness. So the sixth energy center is a metaphoric stained glass window through which the light of consciousness shines on its way to manifestation. How beautiful. So we get the consciousness, we get information coming through, we're taking in image, we're taking in sight, and we're taking in patterns and situations through our third eye. And when the sun shines through the glass, it projects the image of the stained glass onto whatever solid surface that it hits. So whatever we've got going on inside us, when that light comes through, that's what we're going to see. So we're going to see the solid surface. We're going to see that however we've been programmed to see it. Okay, so for example, someone says something to us, one person can take it one way and another person can take it another way. This is perception. And this is to do with programming. So, somebody says something and one person can think that, oh, what a bitch. And another person can think, well, I didn't think that at all. But, it's to do with our old, our individual programming of what that even means. So the light of consciousness shines through the pictures we hold in our minds, shaping what we create. So what we see and what we perceive, what we understand it to be, is shaping what we are visualizing and creating. These images are also filters, sometimes distorting our perception. So we project what we believe onto the world around us. So whatever it is that is incoming, for example, I, for a long time, had the idea that I was being bullied by a lot of people. And this is because I've been bullied in my childhood by my family. And yeah, I kind of believe that a lot of people who were coming into my life were treating me in the same way. And this is a filter. So this is, some information comes in, somebody's saying something, it goes through that filter on my particular lens, and it pipes up, that perception, beep, 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 bully. And so I project that. My belief system is when somebody says something like that, it's bullying, right? Whereas actually, there's probably heaps of elements to that person that they're not, and they're maybe just being very real. And what I'm doing is I'm projecting my perception onto them. So the awakening of consciousness requires a clearing of the third eye, so we can see what is within and what's around us without distortion. And so we begin to see where we're judging, we begin to see where we've got shame, we begin to see where our triggers are from situations around us and what we are projecting. And so a really good way, obviously we've got to work through the whole system to be able to get to the state where we've got a nice and clear third eye. But it's like cleaning the lens. The more clear we get it, the less of our own perception we're projecting. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're getting to the point where we are literally just observing. The Anya. So this is the Sanskrit name for the third eye. Beautiful word, beautiful name, I think. And it means to perceive and to command. So we see images with our physical eye, but the third eye holds these images in memory, which can distort our perceptions. So the images come in with our physical eye, and then the energy of the third eye, so the energy center, holds these images, the energy of these images, in a memory bank, in a memory storage, which then distorts our perceptions. So from these perceptions, we're commanding our reality. So we're manifesting what we're seeing, what we're envisaging, and then, you know, we believe, our beliefs come up, they hit our third eye, our energy center, and we are then visualizing what we think is going to happen, the perception of that. And very often that's what happens, is because whatever we believe is what comes to us, and that's why a lot of the time we get stuck in these cycles. You know, we think men are predators. We have an image come in, we see a man, we project our held image of a memory of a man being a predator onto what we see around us, and that perception will actually create, command that is what happens. Our inner sight gives us guidance, and we can see where we've been, we can see where we are now, and we can predict where we are going. Right? So when we get a really nice and healthy third eye, a really nice healthy Anya, we are able to see all of our patterns. We are clearly able to see in the now. We work with meditation and being able to be very present, and be very crystal clear on what we are seeing. And we also get, these beautiful skills, these extrasensory skills, human skills of being able to see into the future. And this consciousness lets us know what to do. So with vision, our action becomes creative acts of will in the service of transformation. So being able to see where it is we're going, or where it is we want to go. So, we've activated our personal power. We've activated we've realized in our solar plexus where it is that we want to go, what we're here for. In our heart, we expand the energy into drawing in what it is that we need from support to be able to create this, and love for ourselves to know that this is something that's possible for us. We have enough respect and enough compassion for ourselves to believe in ourselves, and at that point we begin to express creatively, and we can visualize it very, very clearly as we start to move forward. So its purpose, the element of this energy center is light. So as we move from the throat chakra up to the third eye, the energy gets compressed more and more and more, and it goes higher. The vibration becomes higher and it becomes faster. So it turns from sound into light. Okay, here we go. So we've got those vibrations coming out, and then it turns into beams of light. Through light, we see taking the shape and the form of things around us. So we're able to have clarity with light. Light, lights up the darkness. We're able to see those dark places within us. We're able to see those shadows, and we're able to see the shape and the form of things around us. It's almost like, turning the light on in a dark room. We're able to kind of be like, oh, okay, well, this is what's happening. This is what's going on, and we begin to get crystal clear clarity around our patterns, our behaviors, and what it is that we're here for, what our purpose is, and where we're not loving ourselves, and where we're not in our worth. The third eye witnesses the internal screen where memory, fantasy, images and archetypes, intuition and imagination intertwine on an endless display. So we've got this internal screen of where we've been, of where we want to go, of dreams, of archetypes, of fantasy, of things that heroes or what we'd love to kind of step into in our lives. And yeah, we're witnessing that pretty much constantly. And as we're watching this, we create meaning and bring it into consciousness. So we're we're seeing, oh, that memory, that's something that we want to do again. Bring it into consciousness, we bring it into, then we create it in our reality. The purpose of the sixth energy center is to see the way and to bring the light of consciousness to all that exists within and around us. So lighting up the darkness, being able to see the truth, and bringing clarity to, all of our pattern. Here we go, pattern recognition is like a game of connect the dots. So even before the dots are connected, we can guess the image before we recognize it. And so, it gets to a point in our lives that we're like, oh, this old chestnut again. Yeah, I've been here, I've seen this before. And at that point, when we're really working on our third eye, and once we step into adulthood and we have the opportunity to develop that third eye a little bit more as well, and we have the benefit of retrospect, looking back at our patterns, we are able to more clearly recognize a pattern as it shows up in our reality. At a critical point in assembling the information, the incomplete pattern reveals the whole. Okay, so we understand that this information is kind of coming in for a reason, and this is when we shine a light and we gain some clarity around the fact that we have got patterns. We are able to reveal the whole before we actually have to kind of complete that pattern. So each of our energy centers brings us information, and through energy, so different forms of energy coming in at different frequencies, and it's the task of the sixth energy center to assemble all of that information into meaningful patterns. And this self-reflection leads to self-knowledge and to wholeness. And so recognizing, when we're consistently not feeling safe, we're consistently not feeling connected to our body, what does that how does that show up? Does it show up as financial insecurity? Does it show up as not being able to hold down a job? Do we have lots of shame? Does that show up as lack of self-worth? And as we begin to really work with the sixth energy center, we are able to assemble all of that information, and to some it might seem scattered, like, why is this happening again and again and again? If we understand that this information is being perceived at the level that we are able to bring it in, and we're creating our reality from those beliefs, then we are able to really gain some self-knowledge, and from that point we are able to step more into our wholeness as we integrate this knowledge. Pattern recognition requires the ability to see simultaneously into the past, present, future. So we said that before. So we're able to say, well, I've seen this before. Able says us to say, well, I've seen this before, this is what's going to happen now in the present, and it will probably happen in the future as well. For example, we've got a friend who just completely always goes on about how much they hate their job, or complains about the same thing. We've all been guilty of that, and we all know people like that, just constantly going over the same thing and nothing seems to change. Then people tune out, right? They might not even notice if something new comes up. It's like, oh, this is happening again, and we just connect the dots before we've seen the actual whole. And what we do is we take in the information from the past. This has happened, and this is going to continue to happen into the future, right? And this happens in relationships. We say, oh, this is what's happened, and we refuse quite often to consider that there can be something else happen in the future. And quite often it is like that. Relationships go round and round and round and round and round in the same cycle because no changes happen. So there is no self-reflection, there is no self-knowledge. People aren't stepping into their wholeness. And pattern recognition can shut off the possibility for new information. So if somebody is making changes and we're still just projecting that same old past onto them, then it stops the new information being able to be received by us. Or it can spare us an experience we would rather avoid, right? So we meet someone and they've got those red flags, in friendship, in relationships, whatever, we can say, oh, I've seen this before, I'm going to say no to this one. And whatever it is that we interpret, we'll decide what we choose. Okay, so we are in complete control, and it's through our own patterns. So quite often, we can have those same friendships that we bring in, and we think they all look all good, and then it turns out that really they're just reflecting an unseen part of us, and that we have to, or we can block people, maybe. And it's like we're not accepting that it's something about us that's just showing up the same thing. So again, we're just projecting that. So whatever it is that our interpretation is, decides what we're choosing for our present. And as we begin to recognize our patterns, we find our way to insight. And insight is the ability to see within. And each time we begin to recognize a pattern, we move towards our wholeness. So what we're doing is we're shedding. So all of these patterns that we have, they've been programmed, they're moving away, they're moving us away from our wholeness. They're creating another layer on top of us that's saying, this is what I've experienced, therefore this is what is going to come in. And we're not really seeing our reality, to its fullest potential. And this wholeness has an identity, which gives it both meaning and purpose. This wholeness is our truth. This is who we really are. And this is our soul essence. And at that point, when we recognize that soul essence, we create great meaning in our lives, and we create purpose. And we know what then our purpose is, because we recognize these patterns that have kind of beep, 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 led to where we are. All those things that light us up, all those things that have been like, like the stepping stones in our lives. They're things that we've really enjoyed, not because other people have said that we should enjoy them, but the things really, truly that we have enjoyed. And opening the third eye allows us to see the big picture. It allows us to transcend our egocentricity and allows us to find the deeper meaning inherent in all things. So it allows us to begin to see the symbolism. So all of, the universe communicating with us, down to the littlest, finest details, down to, when we know that we should let go, when we know that we should still hold a vision, but we should let go of attachment to it. And we begin to see signs in the people that we're talking to. If we're not projecting what we think onto somebody, projecting and judging what somebody's saying to us, if we recognize that everybody who talks to us is the universe communicating, it's a really big what's the word for it? It's a big shift in how we perceive. And as we're perceiving patterns, we run into illusion. Okay, so we can quite often run into illusion, which is the demon of the third eye. So it's the counterforce. Closes down the third eye. It arrests our consciousness from open-minded perception. It fixes upon a frozen image. This is the frozen image that's from the past. It's not true. It's just stuck. So it's a static image, one that is a memory or something that someone said to us or whatever. It's not real. It's not based in present moment reality. It's just placed in the stream of time, and for that reason, it's unreal. The illusion I have about how something should be is usually an image of what it currently is not. So that's really interesting, right? So the illusion I have, so there's something that I'm putting onto an attachment of, say my relationship at the moment with my ex. I'm thinking this is how I really want my relationship to be. And what I'm actually doing is creating an image in my mind of what I want it to be, not what it actually is. Okay, so I've got this illusion of what I think it should be. I'm coaching myself right here. And so the attachment to that image, the attachment to that illusion pulls you out of present time. So you're not actually seeing what is real. Someone's saying something to you, and you're putting your own illusion onto that, right? So illusions of how a relationship might be, it makes you criticize all the places where your relationship falls short of that image. So you want it to be a certain way, you want someone to be a certain way, and what it makes you do is, this is when we become really critical, right? So it's judgmental, it's saying, hey, that's not right. This is how I believe it should be. This is how I believe you should be, because you haven't understood that everybody's got a different lens of perception. And you're failing to see the meaning that these issues have for you. So whatever the issues you have, whatever the triggers you have, are all the things that we need to look at to heal within ourselves. And also illusions are held in place by an investment of psychic energy. So it's very, very tiring. It takes up a hell of a lot of energetic space to have this illusion in place. And when we're continuously fixating on an image, everything becomes food for its embellishment, right? So, we're thinking, this is how I want my relationship to be. You see another relationship, you see something on Instagram, and you say, oh, that would be a beautiful thing. So I'm going to put that onto my illusion. I'm going to stick that onto the image of how I want something to be. And then, they say something, and you think, oh, well, this is even more like adding to the fuel for this embellishment. And then it can be very shattered if that's not actually the truth, but we're just taking our perception of what somebody's saying and sticking onto the image of what we're trying to create, but we're creating it from a lack of truth, a lack of our own truth, a lack of our own authenticity. So yeah, if we think someone dislikes us, who said this happened? We take slight disharmony as proof. So someone can just be, resting bitch face, when you see someone and you just think, oh, they really don't like me. And then you see them, and anytime any little thing happens, it just adds to the illusion, adds to the image that this person doesn't like you. And then in the end, you can sit down and have a chat with them, and they say, hey, I didn't even see you that day when you thought I looked at you like that. So we invest in an illusion, and it ties up our energy, and it perpetuates the attachment. So it's just this full psychic energy kind of vortex that we're not seeing the clear picture. We are creating an attachment, we're creating a picture, we're creating a story, and it's not real. So the more that we're attached to something, the more energy we need to invest, and it's here that we run into the danger of obsession. So we need to be really, really careful about adding all of these illusions up onto each other, becoming deluded, and beginning to think that things are real that aren't. So we're convincing ourselves of something that isn't actually based in reality at all. And it becomes an addiction. So it keeps us in this thinking mode of thoughts, oh, that must be what that is, right? So it's not real, it's based on our beliefs that if we haven't looked at, or we still haven't cleared, it takes a very, very long time to keep shedding the layers. And these layers keep coming up, and we realize, oh, well, that's not based in reality either. So learning to really disattach is a massive, massive process, and it takes a long time. And it's not something that you can just do overnight. It needs to be through being able to recognize your patterns clearly, and these patterns keep coming up until we really do clear them. And yeah, like the happily ever after model of marriage and abandonment, so really putting this image onto something that was never really based in reality. Like, this is what's going to happen, and you're kind of what you're really doing is you're not looking at all the patterns, you're not looking at the red flags, you're not looking at all the things that are saying, hey, you're not going to be in your realness, you're not going to be in your authenticity. If you stay in this relationship, if you stay in this marriage, you know, you're going to have to kind of sacrifice your own truth. And this is the same for friendships. When you're in friendships that, you know, you can't be your true self, and you're having to hide parts of your truth to be able to relate to these people or whoever you're with, you end up not speaking your truth. All of those things are illusionary. You know, you're not. It's not real. They're not real. It's not real friendship. And then when illusion is fed by excess energy, you're just putting heaps and heaps and heaps of energy into this illusion. It becomes delusional, and delusions assemble elaborate illusions around essential themes. So whatever that is, you know, like say for example, the abandonment, you're expecting to be abandoned, and you continuously keep bringing this into your experience. It's not necessarily really happening, but you are potentially pushing somebody away, and then you're perpetuating this situation where you believe that you're going to be abandoned, you push people away, and then you call it abandonment. And so that might be a central theme, or the happily ever after might be a central theme, or whatever it is that, you know, you've got this illusion around. And then the more we invest in the illusion, the harder it is to let go of it. So, you know, for example, you know, you've put years into a marriage, and you've invested everything. You've invested your all so much time, so much energy. You don't want to let go of it, so you wrap more excess energy into it, and it really becomes delusional or obsessional. To keep that, you need a lot of psychic energy to keep that situation even going. Archetypes. So the composite. So this is pretty pretty complex stuff to a certain degree, but archetypes are so fascinating. They've been coming up a lot in my consciousness. The female archetypes, and so these are the archetypes of the self, and fascinating in that, you know, all of these archetypes are embedded into kind of the light frequencies, you know. So it's all of these images and experiences, and it's got just a common theme, and it's embedded into the morphogenic fields that shape all of our understanding about who we are. So we think that we are pretty individual. We think that we've got all these ideas, but everything, we have this information, and the thoughts just kind of come through to us. But where do these thoughts come from? It's coming through from these morphogenic fields of these archetypal energies. So they can't be seen directly, but they are apparent in the events of our lives. So, for example, we've got the Great Mother archetype, and when we become pregnant, we suddenly start bringing in a lot of information about motherhood, and we start to step into the archetype of the mother. But you know, when you're very, very self-sacrificing, you can be like a martyr to this energy, to this mother energy, and you can be overly influenced by this archetype. And someone who lives in fear of being devoured by women may be suffering from the negative sides of this archetype. So men also, you know, if they have got they're integrating any of this mother archetype, they've got a fear of women being suffocating, being you know, just suffocating energetically, like meddling and kind of taking over their lives and not letting them be. And each of the energy centers running up from the root to the crown can be correlated to an archetype. And as we work through the individuation process, we work through balancing these archetypes. So we've got the Earth Mother, so connecting in with other Mother Gaia, Pachamama, and the Provider, which is the masculine. And so the Lover is the sacral, and so we might identify with the lover and not realize it. So maybe somebody who cheats on their partner doesn't understand that they've got this archetype that they haven't stepped into, they haven't recognized, they don't know that this is like one of their fundamental archetypes, right? And so they're denying it, and it's pushed into the shadows, much like all of the elements of self, all those aspects of ourself that exist that we talked about in the shadow. If we're not owning them, they end up in the shadow. And so the hero's journey and the solar plexus, really coming into our personal power, healer and the heart, healing our own heart, being able to connect with compassion to other people's hearts. The artist, creative expression, the seer, the third eye, being able to see the bigger picture and being able to see the bigger patterns and visualize, what's clairvoyant, see what's happening in the future. And then the sage, master in the crown, so really just transcending and unattaching and connecting with the cosmos. And the individuation process itself is an archetypal process. So it's something that we all experience. It's something that we all move through, even in our own, like we're all completely different, but we all have this archetypal process that we must move through in terms of recognizing who we are. And so reclaiming our shadow, establishing our autonomy, integrating our anima and animus, male and female, expressing our individuality, recognizing our archetypal influences. So whatever it is, that's really influencing our lives at this present moment, beginning to recognize that in the third eye, and then integrating all these elements into a greater wholeness when we get to the crown. So we move into our archetypal identity. We enter a broader context of understanding and a deeper recognition of who we are and what our purpose is. This is essential work of developing our archetypal identity. So being able to see, who we are and what we're here for. Are we here to really take action and as a leader, or are we here to heal? Are we here to be that mother? Are we here to really transcend? Are we here to create art? Are we here to do a few of the different things? Are we here to help people kind of reconnect with their sexuality through connecting with our own sexuality and really just admitting that to ourselves. And so like I said, these archetypes are embedded into a larger field. When we encounter them, we might feel a really strong psychic charge. So it creates everything around us suddenly starts to become very significant. And so we see ourselves as the archetype of a teacher, a healer, a mother, an artist. We're gaining with that recognition an inherent set of instructions or energy. So we might think that, we're the first people to do this, but no, there's been teachers, there's been healers, there's been mothers, fathers, artists since the beginning of time. So at that point, we are gaining, we're downloading, we are bringing into our conscious awareness instructions and energy. And we get guided by the universe towards the tools that we need to carry out the role. So whatever we're given the response is, and whatever we need to carry out that specific archetypal role. Knowing our archetypal influences help to clarify our modes of perception. So it clarifies our purpose in life, and it tracks the things we need in order to fulfill that purpose. Unconscious behaviors and belief systems are also fueled by archetypal energies. So, like I was saying about the shadow, we, for example, say you've got a very critical father, and your whole life you're trying to live into this father role, this father, what he expects of you, and the authoritarianism. What you're doing is we're actually creating unconscious behaviors and belief systems fueled by the energy of that father archetype. Okay, and what the father archetype believes is how we should run our lives, and we need to really become aware of this matrix that we're kind of creating around this archetypal energy. It's kind of energetic. We're drawing in our reality around this matrix, so we can become aware of what we're doing, become aware of those patterns, and we can break the cycle. So yeah, there's heaps of that archetypal stuff, and I really want to do some more of that when we get the stuff up on the website. And so symbols in the visual realm, symbols speak to us as representations of powerful archetypal energies. And so as we're moving into this symbolic realm up into the visual, so we begin to see these patterns, and patterns can quite often come through in symbols. They come through in like dreams or visions, or somebody will say something and it becomes very symbolic, depending on where we're at with really trusting that what we're being shown is guiding us towards where we're aiming to get to. So for example, like if we're becoming new mothers and we're being guided towards the right information, but yet we're maybe still stuck in our ego around what we think is right. Maybe we're not seeing the symbols and we're ignoring the symbols, and just really getting stuck in our own vision of what we think it should be, projecting our own beliefs into what we think it should be, even though we're being shown through people, situations, symbolic ways, what the reality is, right? I hope that makes sense. So they're immediate whole brain way of communicating these energies. So they emerge when we recognize a pattern. So when we begin to recognize a pattern in our lives, say for example, we've been going through a really big time of transformation, and we understand that a lot of the time, like animals will show up to us when something is going down, or it's some particular pattern that we are working through. Say for example, the dragonfly means transformation, and quite often it can be, if you assign that symbol to that, then that will quite often show up when you are experiencing that. And the more you trust in that, the more you can use these symbols to recognize your archetypal identity and begin to develop that deeper and move further in towards that archetype. Dreams. So this stuff's quite deep, right? And I'm really just touching on it because there's a lot to it, but I just want to give you the general overview around what development, where we get to, so what the third eye encompasses, what its meaning is, and the different kind of aspects and situations and experiences that we have in life that really are relevant to the third eye. So dreams link the conscious and the unconscious mind, right? So we know this to a certain degree, and so in linking that, they link the lower and the upper chakras. And so if we are not aware of what's going on for us on a subconscious level, we will quite often dream in symbols, and it will tell us. These symbols will tell us, but we might not understand what they mean because we haven't connected in with those lower chakras. So we haven't understood that we've got kind of unlooked at patterns and traumas and issues that are going on those lower levels, on our instincts and our feelings and our impulses, right? So it's the connection between The lower processes are instincts, feelings, and impulses, and the larger archetypal world of spirit. So it allows us to open up the way for us to see things in a whole new light, reveals hidden feelings, understandings, desires, needs, and rejected selves, unused talents, and missing parts of our wholeness. So dreams are really a very, very useful tool to be able to access our truth, our subconscious, our shadow, and they can often bring answers to problems that our conscious mind can't solve. And so really become powerful spiritual teachers. So we're able to access our dreams, and we can remember them, and we can begin to create a dream diary, and really begin to again see the patterns, and assign a symbol to a meaning. Dreams take us out of the body. Obviously we can astro travel, we can go off into other realms, we end up doing all sorts of different things from the comfort of our own bed, but also it can bring us back into the body, and quite often we can have those feelings, we can have those movements that we deny within ourselves on an unconscious level in our waking life. And in order to understand our dreams, we must embrace symbols as representations of archetypal energy and our intuition to find their meaning. So yeah, really interesting work, and we're going to be doing some of that this week. And intuition, love this work on intuition, because it just opens up so many doors for excitement for our lives, and as we really begin to hone our intuition, we begin to recognize a pattern. So on an unconscious level, we begin to know, if we haven't necessarily kind of integrated our unconscious and our conscious, but there's something within us that says, this isn't right, I don't want to be here. And we can deny that, and we stay there anyway, and we say, oh, be silly. Like internally we just say, oh, it's going to be fine, but our intuition is that unconscious recognition. So something inside us is saying, we've seen this before, this is not going to end well, and so Carl Jung, the functions of the intuition is one of the 4 functions, and sensation, feeling, and thinking are all combined to create our intuition. And the development of intuition enhances our psychic abilities and is a central function of chakra 6. So once we really begin to trust our intuition, and we're in a situation, our intuition says, no. And we go on a conscious level, no. And we really trust that intuition. And we, this is where it becomes really interesting to play with the universe, because the universe gives us these same situations to test us, to see how we're going to respond on this conscious level. So are we going to give it a good hard no? This is not something that I'm going to put up with. This is not something that I'm going to, that same guy comes in again with all of those red flags, but is saying all the things we want to hear, but there's a few red flags, and something in our intuition says, nah. But our conscious mind says, oh, it's all right, just give them a chance. The universe is actually giving us an opportunity to say no, so that we can clarify our intuition more, so we can become really in touch with our truth and our deep knowing more. And so we need to just really say no, right? And if we're shut off from our unconscious processes and we live almost entirely in our conscious mind, then our intuition will be undeveloped. So if we're not connected to our conscious processes, if we're not working with them, if we're not recognizing when they're coming up, if we're not realizing that we're drawing in those same people, if we're kind of victimhood and we're just projecting, we're saying, I can't believe that guy did that to me, I can't believe my friend did that to me, our intuition remains undeveloped. And without intuition, we can't grasp the whole or the essence of something. So we're not understanding the bigger picture. We're not seeing that, this is something, we're getting these situations for our own evolvement, for the purpose of our own growth, you know. And it's passive, so like the lower chakras, it's passive, so we really need to, we can't control it. It's not something we can, you know, really try and control and call on and say, you know, right, intuition, come in now. It's really something that we need to surrender to, we need to let go, and we need to trust. And we need this intuition because it opens us up to the larger cosmic world. So the more we trust it, the more we listen to our truth and our inner self, and we say the no's, we pass the tests, we recognize the patterns, that is when we are more likely, or definitely likely, to start bringing in, you know, more of what we need into our reality, raises our vibration, and it connects us to everything. So it connects us to the entirety of the universe. But unfortunately, we live in a culture that favors logic over intuition. So logic is, you know, I'm at a point and that point comes next. I'm just going to go to that point. That makes sense to me. And then I'm going to go to that point over there because that makes sense to me. It makes sense in my thinking mind. Rather than intuition saying, hold on, none of that seems right. I'm just going to sit that one out entirely, you know. Okay, so as children, we're not taught to value our intuition. So a lot of the time our hunches are discounted if we can't logically defend our reasoning. So if we, you know, if we're asked, we say, this is how I feel, this is what's coming up for me on an intuitive level, this is what, you know, I'm being told from the inside. From the outside, we will get questioned, we'll be asked, well, logically, how is that possible? Logically, how could you know that? You know, because we're not, societally, we're not taught about intuition. We're not taught that it exists. We're not taught that we need to trust ourselves. Like we said, you know, the image, this is what we should do. People are telling us how we should be. So we learn to discount this. And we learn to not follow it, which is really, really sad, obviously. And so the rational mind thinks in pieces. It's actually poorly suited for grasping larger wholes on an immediate experiential level. So we'll be thinking, well, this is this, and then that's that, and we're trying to put it all together, but we're not able to just see the bigger picture because we've got this intuitive bigger picture vision when we've really got our balanced third eye. And so to grasp concepts of cosmic and transcendent consciousness, the realms associated with the upper chakras, we need to have a more direct means of perception. And this is the purpose of intuition. So really to be able to understand what our purpose here is, like what we are, the dimensions, the different dimensions that we exist within, the basis of our reality, like what we're doing and how what we're attracting in. If we're thinking on a logical level, we're going around, like for me, for example, number plates talk to me. They just talk to me. So, if I'm in a good mood, I'll have a number plate, yay, or I'll have, just like the word rad or whatever. And if I'm thinking with my rational mind, I'm thinking, how's that possible? But if we're understanding that we're really, the cosmos, source, spirit is constantly communicating, we can really perceive that as a symbol, and our intuition says, yeah, all that's got to be right because that feels right. And the flash of intuition, as it comes up, is a momentary illumination of the psyche and reveals its underlying wholeness. And so we recognize in that place, what's going on for us on all of our levels of our psyche. We understand that every single level of our being is is creating what we're bringing in, and that's what our intuition allows us if we begin to just really trust it and follow it and hone it, practice. So once we've really begun to hone our intuition, we can move into this existential state of clairvoyance. And it means to really be able to clear see, and opens our sight to the non-physical planes. So we were able to see auras and chakras and past or future events. See, I'm at the point now where I can see auras, and if I'm really in a clear seeing sight where I've been following my intuition and I'm not kind of stuck in illusion and I'm very, very clear sighted, I can see this. I can see energy, and I can see flashes of the future. Trying to convince other people that that is the case as a visionary is often quite, I wouldn't say tedious, but it can be pretty tiring. And so you end up a lot of the time keeping it to yourself, but that's okay, because what it's there for is to really just guide you on your journey. And you will end up bringing in the people around you that think in the same way energetically. So as you really begin to trust your intuition, recognizing all the patterns that you're bringing in, you're able to then really create this clear sight. So it begins with the development of intuition, and it's a matter of learning to focus your internal attention on something long enough to illuminate its patterns. So able to really gain awareness of our own conscious process. So we're able to see the choices that we're making, the direction that we're going. If it's based on our intuition or it's based on, logicality, rational thinking, we gain the ability to focus that awareness where we choose. Therefore, if we've got this vision and our intuition is telling us that it's right, we can really focus our awareness, and with that focus of awareness, we step into our truth. And once we find our own light, we can shine that light on whatever we wish to see. So the more we become whole, and we're trusting our intuition, we're trusting our inner self, which is obviously based on getting to know ourselves, getting to know our patterns, honing our intuition, moving into this place of clairvoyance, which is clear sight. We've got this clear light coming in, light coming out, filling our body up with light, filling ourselves up with light, and then we can shine that light onto whatever we want to. So we can see patterns of other people. And once I moved into this place of intuitive healing, and that's basically just being able to see other people's patterns that they can't see themselves. And like intuition, we have to surrender to the unconscious mind. So it's another state of surrender, and just understanding that the unconscious mind is going to let us know through the patterns and through the experiences, and through all of the senses and the feelings. We can't control those senses and feelings. We don't know, who knows where they really come from, but they're coming from source in some way. They're coming into us for the purpose of fulfilling our destiny in this lifetime. And this really requires trust. So we need to work on our mats, we need to surrender on our mats with our yoga, and we need to trust in the process. So if we feel like we need to let go of something, it's not in our highest purpose, not in our highest alignment, we need to just let go. Whatever feels really right on that intuitive level, what we need to trust. And we need to be patient, because we're going to keep getting these tests coming in, we're going to keep getting things that are testing our intuition, and keep opening up to our inner feelings, keep opening up to the voices that we're hearing. Once we recognize all those other people's societal voices that are programmed, once we can begin to recognize those, and it's not a process of no mind when you're meditating, it's a process of getting to know your mind. Right? And then once we get to know our mind and we get to know all those individual voices, we can begin to clear them and really begin to I can't remember the word for it, but it's basically, we get to know them, we befriend them, we understand where they've come from, and they begin to quieten. So they're not as loud screaming at us to do a certain thing. Once we get that really, really quiet, that all goes away, and we can see why it's coming to us, and where that's come from within our lives, and to basically control our existence because society, peers, whatever, have told us that that's how we need to feel. Once we can get rid of all of that and we understand that it's there just to protect us, we can really start to trust that one loud voice that will start getting louder and louder and tell us what's real. So transcendent function, so chakras 6 and 7, so the energy centers of the third eye and the crown, are the mental mirrors of the lower and the middle realms. So chakra 6 reflects the unconscious, so it's connected in with the lower chakras, while chakra 7 is the realm of conscious understanding. So chakra 7, the crown energy center, is the central processing unit that finds meaning in all of the images that the energy center of the 6 brings forth from the lower realms and incorporates them into an ever-growing body of understanding. And so once we begin to understand all of our own patterns, we begin to understand the greater patterns of the world and the cosmos and the universe, and we begin to really just understand who we are and what we're here for. So the nadis meet. I don't know if you've seen that image of the nadis crossing over and the energy centers as they go up. So it's the energy flow. Nadis are energy channels, and as they move up, they actually create the spinning of the energy centers. And so you've got them, they both come up. The Kundalini energy comes up from the root and it intertwines, and it's the masculine and the feminine, and it's chakra 6. Energy center of the third eye, it spins it round, and that's the last point. So that's those energy centers aren't actually connected to the crown. So what we need to be able to do is really open up the third eye and get it very clear, make sure it's not in excess, and then what we're doing is we're really bringing truth in, and understanding that the crown is going to actually process everything that we're seeing, everything that we believe, and it's going to bring down, it's going to be able to bring down more information. So we're effectively being able to channel at that point because we've cleared all the energy. Everything's being processed in a really healthy way, and making sure that all of the dualities, everything has been present and it's united at the energy center of the third eye, before the energy then moves into the transcendence and the non-dualistic nature of the crown chakra. So the site of oneness. So that's really connects us in with oneness. And as we're wandering around, we can then recognize how we are all just consciousness having a physical experience. So we can see the light of consciousness, and we're actually able, and this is the point that I'm at now, whereas I'm able to see people's patterns as I walk by them, and I can see from their response where they're at within their own particular processing. And so energy center of the third eye is the ground in which the dualities meet and become transformed. So our dualities are the polarities of existence in this physical plane meet up in the third eye, and the conscious and the unconscious meet, and at that point it gets transformed into the totality of consciousness. So at this point there's a synthesis, so there's a coming together, a meeting, and it's a resolving the struggle between the conscious ego and the repressed instincts by synthesis that includes both. And once this resolution has occurred, we can use the energy of our instincts consciously and harmoniously and stop being used by them. And so understanding that our instincts are something that's guiding us, but at the same time recognizing that if it's within an egoic instinct, if it's something that we want to do, it's an instinct that we want to do, that's something that's repressed within us, and it's not something that we have recognized, and we're not integrating it into our lives, and understanding that if we integrate that instinct, then it's going to guide us more towards our wholeness. And at this point, we can use the energy of our instincts consciously and harmoniously and stop being used by them. And we emerge into a larger sphere of understanding. So we're understanding so much more about ourselves, our place in the universe, we're understanding our instincts, where they're coming from, and using the energy of that to be able to understand the bigger picture. And it's the final step in the bridge. So it's the final step in our bridge from heaven to earth, and the final step in individuation, if individuation is ever finalized. So yeah, in this human existence, it's constantly the shedding, it's constantly the patterns. You know, we can work on ourselves to a certain degree, but we're always going to have these tests coming in until potentially we reach the point where we are we're completely unattached and we are just living in a state of oneness. But I truly believe that it's not going to happen on an individual level until it happens on this collective level as well. And it's the gateway also to self-reflection and self-knowledge. And so really being able to resolve the conscious and the unconscious and all of the polarities enable us to look within. So rather than looking to the external, we're able to self-reflect and gain self-knowledge, like really, really deep self-knowledge from that place. Vision. So the final outcome for the sixth chakra, with its archetypes, images, dreams, fantasies, symbols, and illusion, is the emergence of a personal vision. So once we begin to be able to self-reflect and we begin to see more and more of who we are, and we can see more deeply into ourselves and then into the people and the situations around us. And as we expand our own internal picture into a larger, more comprehensive worldview, we inevitably create a vision. And, you know, depending on the person, depends on, you know, what that vision is. And usually this vision is going to be, you know, it could be of a new earth. It could be of a vision for our individual life, you know, where we want to take our own work. And usually it uses the imagination to create something that's never been seen before. So it's something, you know, it's a really powerful way of envisaging something something bigger than us, you know. And this is where, you know, the Akashic records come in. So it's not us that's getting this vision. It's almost like the clearer that we get our third eye, the clearer that we get our crown chakra, the more open we are, the more we're able to bring in this vision that is wanting to come through us, right? So so the destiny is it something that we create, or is destiny already out there waiting to be able to channel through us so that we can bring it into fruition with our action, with our solar plexus. And the image of this held in our mind becomes a blueprint for our construction of reality. And as we heal the sixth chakra, we are able to create this vision. We're able to form consciously the path to the future and liberate ourselves from the grips of the past. So rather than being stuck in this psychic channel of past situations, our unconscious is ruling our lives. You know, we're just so worried about the day-to-day, in struggle street, worrying about how we're going to survive, worrying about these, you know, codependent relationships that we're in, worrying about never being able to express our truth, what is our truth. Rather than worrying about that, we've opened up our channel, we've resolved all of those issues, and we're now able to create that blueprint of a new reality, right? So, with this reality, we're creating this vision. Our vision makes the difference. And so development, how does this third chakra, sixth chakra develop. So a child's imagination is almost constantly engaged. So kids are always kind of up to stuff. There's no fixed knowledge that they're getting when they're little about how things are, unless you're really indoctrinated from birth. But generally, we give kids a break. We're not necessarily kind of saying that this is how it is. So the imagination, unless it's very indoctrinated, is really free to explore all the possibilities, and they're free from the way that things should be, and are freer to perceive them as they are, which is how it should be as children, right? So this should be a playground for them. Like, play is work for them. Like, this is them discovering the limitless possibilities of the reality of their experience. And all these what ifs that delight childhood curiosity openly explore possibilities. They try and decipher the patterns that influence their lives. And so, constant curiosity, and that's really beautiful in its way, that this is how we should stay. We should constantly stay curious, rather than becoming judgmental in a situation, rather than really solidifying a pattern and saying, that's what that is. Just stay curious. Is that something, is that going to unfold in that way, or is there something better that's going to come along, right? So when we've got this really powerful vision, it could be that it could be that vision, or it could be something else entirely. And this is where we just really need to leave it open for the universe and spirit to surprise us. And this is spirit moving towards its natural goal of liberation and understanding in childhood. And it's essential to support this imaginative creativity if the child is to remain open to the expansion of his or her own spirit. And this is something that obviously gets kind of crushed at generally like quite an early age. And if this imaginative, if it's like, that's not the way, don't be silly, it's not like that, it's like this. Encourage the imagination, encourage it as something that's really going to allow possibilities to be endless. And this pattern recognition, again, so it's a skill that develops throughout life. And so from the recognition of the mother's face to the trance-like states of family roles, so we kind of end up in these roles and we just play out these roles, and we don't recognize that these patterns are forming and being created. And these assimilation of these patterns move from the simple to the complex, and each pattern perceived tells us something about ourselves and something about the world around us. And the ability to think symbolically and abstractly marks the specific development of the sixth chakra. So this is when we are able to begin to shift from, not recognizing the general patterns of our lives, to being able to suddenly start kind of putting things together and say, well, if that's like that, then that must mean that's like that, and that reaches, it's only at a certain age that begins to be within our conscious development. The dogs and the neighbours' dogs going at it. And so this is the first awakening. So Piaget, who's a psychologist, labelled this period of formal operations 12 and up, when a child begins to think like a scientist, to reason and philosophize about their lives. So when they're able to really be able to think about different things and to be able to analyze, I suppose, and begin to look at these patterns and philosophize why they're here and those kind of things. So they labeled it the period of formal operations, and it's 12 and up. And this is the first awakening. We become a teenager. Those times, we all remember those times. Massive confusion for me. I didn't know what was going on. And this awakening occurs when we realize that all we perceive is not necessarily about us, and that there's greater patterns in our world, in our lives around us. So, it's not just about our peers, not just about our family. It's becomes an increased search for our own identity. Who are we? And it needs to resonate with ourselves and take the self someplace larger as well. So we need to give ourselves a direction to say, yeah, this feels good to me, and I want to take this part of myself, this identity, and take it somewhere else and see where it goes. It needs to give direction to the powerful surge of energy that occurs when physical growth tapers off and sexual energy ripens. And so at this point, this energy is hitting the third eye, and we've got to the point where we're kind of physically, all of our energies, or most of our energy is kind of stops going into the actual creating of our physical body, and our sexual energy begins to ripen. And we have this powerful surge of energy, this adolescence there, what's the time, puberty. We've got this like additional energy where we're kind of in search of something. What is it? What is it that we're looking for? Where is it that we want to go? Who do we want to be? And we're searching for a meaningful identity. So in the search for who we want to be, we often see the adolescents engage in a kind of archetypal hero worship, right? So it's sports stars, fashion models, rock stars, and we begin to try on different roles as if we're auditioning for a play. It's like, who do we want to be? Do we want to be this person? And quite often the teenagers are just too cool for school because they're like, this is who I am. It's like, well, actually, are you just trying that on? Is that really who you are? You're just trying to emphasize. And when you're older and you look at teenagers, it can be quite amusing watching their antics as their play role, like acting, which is really, really beautiful time. So it's unfortunate that in this culture, the search for personal meaning has become so crass. Yeah. So, we're thinking like Barbies, we're thinking about, soap stars, we're not looking necessarily at these archetypal images of the warrior and, and there's people like Luke Skywalker and, those kind of archetypes and those kind of heroes that maybe are a little bit more in line for the hero's journey and bringing ourselves back into our heart and our truth. It's rather more, like we were saying, more image-based these days, which is pretty sad because it's really just turning everybody into the same. It's kind of saying to teenagers that unless you're this particular way, the Instagram model way, then you're not going to be accepted. And so imagination consists of a major pattern of the sixth chakra. So it's where can we see ourselves? What's the possibility for us when we're at this age? So much possibility. And we experiment. Maybe we've got a different hairstyle every week. Maybe we've got a different nail varnish color. Like trying on all the clothes, I know that I used to wear like leather flares and I'd have like big fur coats, and it's quite interesting because I'm more now, I'm finding my identity back after motherhood. I'm kind of coming back into that, which makes me think that maybe my imagination was pretty spot on at that age, my intuition of my knowledge of myself. And yeah, it's the time where we begin to kind of pull away from our parents. It's like rather than our families in the fourth chakra, fourth energy center, it's all about the family and what will gain us love and what we're told love is and what we need to be to receive love. And this, I suppose, is when, this age is 7, they say that you've been programmed by 7. And they say that if you've got a lot of trauma, when you do reach your teenagehood, you become even more rebellious. Okay, so have a think about whether that fits in line with you. If that's something that, your rebellious stage when you're a teenager, if that was because you were told that love and what you should be was kind of maybe very much out of line with who you really were. I know I was fully rebellious. I chopped my hair off and dyed it green, I think, and did all the things that was just saying, hey, screw you, I'm gonna do me, And so yeah, the sixth energy center is more about the social group and cultural icons, so looking at where you want to go, like future orientated. And in an adulthood, sixth chakra opening is often called spiritual awakening. So yeah, you can have like another spiritual awakening where you really understand more about who you are and your identity. And this can happen at any time. And like the light of the dawn is often preceded by darkness. So you have this like awakening, you get this light of like, oh, this is who I am, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And at that point, because you've been so awakened, everything in your existence has to be shaken up. So it feels like a darkness, but what it really is that everything is kind of, you know, the right doors are closing and the wrong doors are closing and the right doors are opening up. And it feels like it's all going crazy, and it is, but this is where we need to follow our intuition and really begin to cultivate the trust. And what we have to do is reach down into the depths of our soul. We really need to get to know ourselves. Who are we? What do we want? You know, what do we feel? What is our truth? Like, how do we feel in our heart? We need to open up our heart. And in that point, we can really create a new reality and bring in what's right and what's best for us. So traumas and abuses, how does the Sixth Energy Center become excess or deficient? So our visual memory is directly linked with our somatic experience. And so, you know, whatever we felt or experienced on a physical level, we have a memory that's associated with that. So if we have any abuses to any of the energy centers, it will affect the opening of the Sixth Energy Center as well, right? So anything to do with our feeling, our physical body, anything to do with, you know, our feelings and not being able to be met, our personal power being shut down, our heart closed. You see, any of those things are going to affect the opening of our real perception and our clear sight. And if the feelings associated with these memories or images are unpleasant, we will either repress the memory or we will dissociate from it. So repression, you know, for example, an example is a person's in a relationship where they're being they're in a situation where they witness maybe their dad physically abusing the mum, but the mum doesn't stand up to the dad, and so that contradiction makes you kind of close down to anything because you can't trust what you're seeing on any level, and you're not really getting anything, any real truth coming through. And so you don't want to kind of perceive anything. So you don't feel safe to perceive anything of what you're seeing. You're not trusting in what you're seeing because it's not what's right. And so you begin to close that down, and you just put the blinders on. And so, you know, potentially that person can then go into another relationship and say her partner can abuse her or abuse her children, and she will see that as love. You know, she will see that as the way that love is shown. And yeah, this is where a lot of people fall into just putting the blinders on and not realizing that that's not right, you know. And in dissociation, we inhibit our ability to actually make sense of the things that we see. So we strip them of meaning and value. And so if so many things have happened on a regular basis, you're just seeing it over and over and over again, you're not putting any feeling to it. Dissociate with your feeling, because there's no point in connecting the feeling to something in the end, and you just list off these traumas and abuses that you've seen or you've witnessed, like you have no connection with them, you don't care, you know. And while our subconscious reactions continue, we disconnect from our conscious understanding. Okay, so while we're reacting on a subconscious level, we're playing out these same situations on a subconscious level. You know, this person who doesn't care anymore goes into a relationship where they don't care, but they don't understand that, you know, that's not the right way to treat somebody, and that's not the right way to feel about situations and what's happened to them. And this begins the start of illusion. So if we do see this environment with daily scenes of suffering, closes down our Sixth Energy Center. And someone has worn glasses since childhood. This is a really interesting one. It can actually be worthwhile to explore what was first going on in the family when the vision problems developed. So actually shutting down on the, you know, the physical level, the vision of seeing it. And when a child gets taught that they didn't see what they thought they saw, this is another way that we have an illusion, that we begin to believe and put a picture of what we believe is true over the actual reality of what is the case. You know, daddy's not drunk on the couch, well, we know daddy is. We see him drink. We see him pass out. We're trying to shake him. He's not waking up. He's just tired. We know on an intuitive level that that's not true. So we begin to, not trust our intuition. And we begin to just believe what we're being told rather than ourselves. We're a happy family and we all love each other very much. Very dangerous to kind of say this to kids when there's abuse happening. And these are the kind of illusions that get started or acted out by the family, stated or acted out by the family in their daily drama. So this is illusion, it's not true. We're not a very happy family. That's not true, that daddy's not drunk on the couch. So it's not actually true. And that's when we start replacing the truth for what we want to see, right? Contradiction is difficult for a child to live with, so it's easier to deny their own perception. So it's very, very confusing to live in this world of contradiction. And so we begin to deny our own intuition, deny what we're really seeing, and we just stick these other lenses of not being able to, for example, not being able to feel or feeling unsafe when potentially we could feel safe in our body, and then we're not feeling safe because we're not being kind of tended to and looked after or nurtured, or we want to go a certain way, but we're being told that we can't go that way, so we deny our own perception. This is where it all begins to kind of go wrong for the third eye. And so in discovering our illusion, so we've got to move from the illusion of certainty to the certainty of illusion. So this is the interesting bit, right? So we need to, when people are so certain of something, so certain of a way that people are, or a certainty of something that's happening, an image that they have of something, we need to start questioning that, right? So we need to move from this illusion that something's real to the certainty that there is an illusion there, so that we're placing a lens over our clarity. And at that point, we can awaken our clarity, and it allows us to see many things about our life from a new perspective. So we're able to, when we can see where our illusions are coming from, that what we're creating from our subconscious, we then begin to be able to say, okay, hold on, if that's a pattern, then that must be a pattern too, and it really begins to create clarity. Children are naturally sensitive and they rely on their intuition to assess the situation rather than gain direct knowledge. So it's really sad when this gets abused. And shame abuses the sixth energy center, produces an intense self-scrutiny. So if we're really ashamed, we're not good enough, we're not good, we don't think that we're good inherently, we don't love ourselves, we consistently scrutinize ourselves. And this is where most people are at. Judgment of themselves, judgment of others, the judgment of themselves, completely scrutinizing on a consistent level, habitual level, that shame-based people feel compelled to look and perform as perfectly as possible at all times. So if they don't, if something's not perfect, if they say something that's not perfect, it's that repetitive cycle in the head of, why did you say that? What did you that scrutinized voice. And the vision turns inwards. So rather than looking reflectively inwards, from a perspective of clear vision, what we're doing is we're caught in this paralyzing cycle of self-monitoring, and we're less available for looking outwards, right? So we've got our energy just caught up in this self-perpetuating cycle of just scrutinizing, and we're actually less available to look outside at these patterns, whether we're kind of aware that these patterns exist, which we probably don't, we're at this point. But when we do begin to look at the patterns, we then begin to notice also where this self-monitoring is happening. And when the eyes do look outwards, they're often looking for clues. So we've got this unclear, we've got these lenses of our perception, which is, again, feeding us back. That person doesn't like us. Well, it's because I'm not likable. It's because this, because I did this. Or, not even saying that we know why we're unlikable, but on that unconscious level, we feel like we are. And, you know, we're looking outside to see if we're safe rather than feeling safe within always. And when this self-scrutiny program is lodged in the sixth chakra, it takes up much of the disk space and blocking new information, so not allowing this new information to come through. So when we're in severe shame, people who, you know, really haven't accepted themselves, haven't looked at their shadow, haven't looked at their issue, they can't look other people in the eye, you know, those people that you meet and, you know, you don't seem to be able to make eye contact, or, you know, someone's done something on an intuitive level and they won't look at you directly. No, this is because internally they haven't resolved their own internal issues. And so when they believe that they are basically flawed, you know, when we shield our eyes to prevent anyone from seeing in. So we believe that our soul is, you know, a flawed soul, we're not worth loving, then we don't want people to see that, you know, they might actually see deep into us, they might see all of our own negative internalized image of self. And if we can't meet another's eye, we can neither see or be seen accurately, right? So I don't know if you guys have ever done the eye-to-eye connection stuff. It's really powerful for, yeah, just seeing yourself reflected in another, your divinity. And so deficiencies look like the associated faculties remain undeveloped. So we have poor intuitive ability, often with a compensating focus on the rational thought process. And so, yeah, it's very much, you know, not following your own intuition, not understanding what that feels like. Your heart's not open, you can't follow your own heart. So you really have to look at just the kind of rational thought process. And that makes you, you know, head blind, they call it. So it's called head blind. So it's basically just a disconnect. So you're thinking too much with your head, you're not connecting with your somatic experience, your feelings, and you're just following blindly what your cognitive process, your rational thought process is telling you to do. And we fail to notice the nuances of moods, subtle nuances of other people's moods. So it can look like, you know, being in a party or something, and quite obviously, say for example, the hosts kind of want you to leave or whatever, and you don't pick up on those kind of things because you're not, when your third eye's open, you're able to really feel into extrasensorily how others are feeling. And so we failed to notice that, and we failed to notice also our own moods as well. We might not notice until far too late that we had an intuition that something might not work out. So we feel that it's not going to work out, but we don't recognize it. We're not in tune with that. We're not trusting that. And so we go down that same pattern, that same path, and then we realize that, you know, our intuition was trying to tell us that it was not the right path, or it was that same old pattern again. And we miss all the subtleties of our own process. So, you know, recognizing the red flags, recognizing the tests, recognizing, you know, all the things, the connection with source is guiding us through our intuition. And if we have a bad memory, sixth chakra may have been closed down for protection. So again, it's that repressed memory, takes up a good portion of the chakra storage ability to keep the memory buried, right? So, you know, we're taking up all of that energy to keep that memory actually buried. So it means that we can't recall, we don't have the energy, it's not coming through for us to be able to recognize it in terms of being able to see our patterns and things. People with a deficiency have difficulty visualizing or imagining things. So if you're in a situation where you're saying, oh, but if we do this, it could be like this, and oh, I don't see that, you know, quite often that could be a deficiency. Imagining a new world, imagining, you know, you go into a room, you can imagine it with things on the wall, you can imagine the furniture or whatever. Some people have big problems with that visualization. And the issues are that they can't imagine themselves behaving any differently. This person might just say, that's the way I am, and leave it at that. So they're not understanding that they've got these patterns. And if we can't imagine any change, then it's less likely to occur, right? So if we're not in charge of our own destiny, if we're not realizing that we're a co-creator through our patterns and through our internal processes, then we will not be making any change. We'll be on that same cog turning. And when the contents of our unconscious are repressed, it may be difficult to remember our dreams. So we've got these unconscious symbols coming up for us to look at, but if we're repressing that, then we might not be able to remember because it's not something that we're kind of choosing to look at. And we're cutting ourselves off for an important key to accessing the deeper self. So we're not able to remember our dreams and recognize the symbols and the patterns. Monopolization refers to the state of mind that cannot see the other side. So we're not able to see the bigger picture. We're just kind of caught up in this same loop. We can't see that there's like another option. We can't see that there's something that we could be aiming towards, like a vision, you know. Unable to imagine differences, we deny them or invalidate them. So something that, you know, we could see that there could be a change, but we're denying that, or, you know, saying that that's not a valid option. And denial insists that something does not exist, right? So we've got a pattern and we're denying it. Say we're an alcoholic and we're saying, no, that's not how it's going. So we're basically saying that that doesn't exist. And we're held by this demon of illusion. So held in a fantasy world that keeps us from having the action to take, from having what we need to take the action in our lives. So having these visions, having this awareness of our internal self, and allowing us to move forward. In excess, when an image or a memory is disconnected from the rest of the experience, the energy that is split off is invested in an image. And so when numerous dissociated images do not ground in the experience, an excessive condition develops in the sixth chakra. So we're having, you know, we've got this energy that's split off from the event that we experienced, and a lot of these images, you know, they haven't been reconciled, they haven't been dealt with, and we split off the energy that is associated and held with this image, and this begins to set the third eye like spinning out of control. And these elements, you know, come up. If it hasn't been dealt with, haven't been reconciled or processed, it haunts the person in dreams, appears as obsessive fantasies, or become full-blown delusions or hallucinations. And so experiences, for example, you know, being told that they're not feeling a certain way, and it could be anything from that to, you know, a rape or the lots of, you know, various spectrum of experiences. And these manifest on a spectrum, from mild neurotic annoyance to full-blown psychosis. And these people are under the burden of too much psychic input. So the third eye is way too open, and we've got, you know, energy being sucked up from the lower energy centers because they're not being processed. Everything's kind of stagnant down there, so the energy that's coming in from above is stuck in this upper area and it's not getting through. And so too much psychic input, too many visions, but their visions are far-sighted. So it's, you know, those people who are saying, I can see this vision for the future, I can see, and that's all well and good, but if you're not connected to your lower energy centers, you're never going to ground it into this reality. So you have to have that clear channel, the manifesting channel that comes down through the crown, and it grounds itself into the physical realm to be able to manifest any of these ideas. You know, so you meet a person and suddenly you're going to marry them. You know, this is excess, and it occurs when energy is withdrawn from the lower chakras without grounding, that brings limitation and simplicity. And we understand that we've got, you know, the limitations of the physical realm. A person can get lost in the boundlessness of the upper chakras and have no way to sort it out. So it's all these visions, all these images, and no way to actually understand that, you know, we're here having this physical experience. And they may identify with archetypal identities and have too little personal ego to balance it. So they're not safe within their own house, their own ego. For example, one might think they're Jesus or Cleopatra, and yet have little awareness of how they impact. their friends or whatever. So they're not actually living in this reality. They're just like, this is, you know, I'm living in these big archetypal patterns, and this is who I am. These are the dreams and the visions that I'm having. But yet they've got no idea of, on an egoic level, on this small self in this physical realm, how they're impacting the people in their lives. And when it's wide open, there's little discernment or discrimination. So, you know, not saying, oh, well, that doesn't seem right. You know, we've got to have this. It's great to have this psychic and non-rational input, but we equally need to rationally sort through it, right? So, you know, the people with their wide open sixth chakra, they might be the ones that go and see a psychic and believe everything they get told, you know, rather than kind of rationalizing it and thinking, well, am I really going to end up being a safari guide in Africa? Like, is that kind of part of my path, or am I just following something that's come through or channeled, or, you know? So we really need to be able to discern if that's right for us. And that's something that's going to be able to be manifested in this physical realm. And with the excess, the ability to discern truth from fantasy becomes impaired when bombarded by psychic input, so it's impossible to concentrate. So we're not able to bring it into the physical realm. Simplicity, being able to understand the limitations, and being able to methodically work through our lives and our existence. Psychic development requires the ability to ground information, discern, decipher, and use it wisely in daily life. And so brilliant to bring in that psychic information, but really important for the development of that and understanding the balance of the third eye is to be able to ground that information into this reality, and to be able to use it wisely, right? So it's recognizing when these symbols have kind of gone out of control and we're following it to some kind of random extent, or we're saying, you know, is it just something that's maybe just supporting where we're going anyway? Maybe it's just supporting our existence and our experience of, like, just the backup of that psychic, oh yeah, you're on track, rather than I'm going to wildly just follow that, you know, and run aground because we're just stuck in this cycle in these lower chakras and keep continuing these patterns. So instead, the excess is runaway psychic energy and mind that's open but kaleidoscopic. And a lot of people who are very spiritually open, maybe, you know, very, very spiritual but not very grounded, those people who are kind of in their hippie realm and everything's kind of hippie and the talk of like what I've seen and you know, the delusion, maybe the spiritual as in the religion and all that kind of delusion, they're not necessarily grounded into this physical realm. As usual, it's possible to have characteristics of both. So one might be have incredible dream recall and yet be headblind, or difficulty visualizing in waking life. So it's like, you know, maybe you're having these dreams but you're not understanding the symbolicness of it and still be following a rational path. Understanding that your subconscious is trying to tell you these things. It's like, oh, I had this crazy dream about a big red snake, you know, and not realizing that that could be a warning around maybe potentially the choices that you're making in your life. So it's really interesting stuff, this third eye. So yeah, difficulty visualizing in waking life. So being able to astro travel, but maybe not being able to see clearly into the future of your own path in this physical realm. In imbalance, we have intuitive perceptive abilities that enhance one's functioning and the ability to be imaginative and creative, which is beautiful, you know. So we're able to imagine and create, and we're able to perceive where we want to go, and we're able to really calm the mind and not let it just run like crazy with all these ideas, and we're able to concentrate and ground it into the physical realm, and we're not having these personal issues or lower identities in the way, so we're not having all of our subconscious programming running our reality without seeing the patterns. So we're seeing all the patterns, we're thinking symbolically, we're imagining different outcomes, we're seeing the possibilities, and finding this guiding vision that gives meaning to life. So we find our destiny, we find our purpose, and we surrender to that, and we just follow the symbols and the guiding points that we're given along the way. And a physical malfunctions are, you know, people who've got regular headaches, constantly frowning, trying to make sense, too much going on, or they're thinking too much with their mind, right? They're rushing, trying to figure everything out, and it's just, it's too much intensity of energy here, or a blockage of energy here. It's all just stuck there, you know. And they've got vision problems, you know, thick glasses, and you know, can with extremities turn into brain tumors or pituitary or pineal gland issues. So anything to do with the mind and the brain is third eye malfunctions, so and manifestations in the physical. So yeah, that's it. So there was a few breaks in there, had some things to sort out, but yeah, I hope that was really interesting for you, and yeah, just make some notes and just feel into what resonates for you, where you feel like you sit in terms of the spectrum of the excess and deficiency. All right, beautiful. Thank you so much, guys. See you next week for the crown chakra.